I swear I'm getting a haircut next week. It's getting out of control again.
I've been in the middle of a video game collecting identity crisis for, well, quite a while now, and I thought I'd do a video about this. And since Adam Koralik just released a video called "When is a video game collection considered complete?", which goes into a similar direction, and he requested a few video responses to that, I thought I'd do one and tie it all together like this. So yeah, his video was all about, okay, like what are your goals? What do you consider a complete video game collection? Like, which versions do you get? Do you need a complete set? What do you do with your collection? And since my idea of this has changed quite a bit over the last few years, and it's still changing, and I'm not still quite sure about like what to do with my collecting, I thought I'd take you on a journey. Hello, Adam. Everyone else watching, I'll put his video down in the video description so you can check it out. A little bit of a history about me. I used to play the Master System, which was my first console. I got a GameCube later on. After the GameCube, I fell out with console gaming and started playing World of Warcraft. I still have the collector's edition for Wrath of the Lich King right here as a little reminder of that time. I spent quite a bit of time on it. I had lots of fun, but I fell out of love. It changed too much for me after a while. And once I quit World of Warcraft, to use that like drug addict terminology, once I stopped playing World of Warcraft, I thought I want to get a bit into more single player based, more console based things as well. I was listening to a few podcasts back then, started watching YouTube videos, Happy Console Gamer, Pete Dorr, you know, the 2009, 2010 YouTube retro gaming, well, channels back then. And one podcast I was listening to, they talked about Shenmue. And I thought that sounds amazing. And I got for my Xbox 360, which I got after quitting World of Warcraft and wanting to move into console gaming, I got for the original Xbox Shenmue 2. And I watched the movie. That was my first experience with Shenmue. And I started playing Shenmue 2 and I absolutely loved it. To the point where I wanted to play the first game for myself. Now, back then, the only way to play Shenmue was on the Dreamcast. So for my birthday back in the day, back in 2009, I wished for a Dreamcast with Shenmue. And my father won an auction for me. My parents thought I was crazy for wanting an old console and an old game. And I got my Dreamcast for my birthday and I played Shenmue and I just fell in love. And once I realized that there are old consoles out there, there are old games that are dirt cheap. Back in the day, many places online still had new old stock Dreamcast games, or just used Dreamcast games for next to nothing. I never had a Dreamcast, I never played any of those games. So with my pocket money, which was around 50 euros a month back then, I could either buy a new Xbox 360 game for my Xbox, or I could get games like Power Stones, for I think I paid like 7 or 8 euros for this back in the day. I could get brand new games, Jet Set Radio, I bought this for 15 euros in the shrink wrap back in the day, new old stock, loved that one. And that's when I started getting into role-playing games, because I had little money, I wanted to play a lot of video games, so I needed games that last a longer period of time. That's why I got into role-playing games back then. And I got games like one of my favorites, Evolution, World of Sacred Device, for I think also like 10 euros back in the day. Even in the shrink wrap, this was brand new back then. Of course, since then, retro gaming prices have moved up in price, but I got a lot of cheap games. I got a lot of older consoles, a PS2, a Mega Drive as well. A store around my old hometown had a lot of retro games, 3 euros a piece, sort of familiar, 3 euros. And I just brought stacks and stacks of them back home with me. And I had lots of games to play, lots of fun playing old video games. At one point, around 2013, I got my first job. I started making more money and I wasn't reliant on buying €5 games anymore just to get my gaming fix. So for the longest time, I only bought like cheap games. Anything over €20 back then needed serious consideration, because after that would be like half of my monthly budget for retro games. And when I first got my job, with my first paycheck, I got a 3DS. I got my 3DS XL right here, and I started going into buying more new games. I moved away from retro gaming so much because now I could afford to buy newer games as well. I didn't have to buy the old ones anymore. So my 3DS collection grew. I got a PS4, I got a PS3 as well, and I bought quite a few newer games. And I moved away from retro gaming for a while until a few years ago when I looked at my collection. And this is where it gets interesting. Now the real story starts about my identity crisis. I looked at my collection and space was always... No, I had enough space, but I really considered, do I really need a copy of Hugo Bakezoom taking space away from other games? Like, okay, let's not take Kingdom Hearts, it's not one of my favorites, but you know, there's a clear difference in quality between these two games, and they take away the same amount of shelf space. So this can easily go. I never want to play this, I don't want to see this anymore. The only reason I still have it is because, well, nobody wants to buy it. I didn't even like get rid of it in a lot or something. So this is just a game I got in a bundle somewhere one day, and now it's stuck in my collection for a few years now. So I looked around and I thought, okay, another thing, this was around like the start of the pandemic, where people were talking about like the value of video games, and like video games were seen in a different light as well. And I thought I didn't really care about the value of my collection too much. I'm not after games just because they're rare or expensive, but just out of curiosity, I just went through my whole collection, went to like video game price charting, just a general search, and I added up the value of all of my games. And what I realized was that I had like way too much of my overall net worth sitting in the form of plastic cases on my shelves, and most of them are games I had no interest in anymore. So either I don't like them as much anymore as I used to, or I just got them in bundles, or I don't care about it anymore, or simply some of the games simply like doubled or tripled in value since I got them. And I thought, you know, the financially sound decision is to get rid of all of the games I just don't want anymore. I don't care anymore. If I have them or not, it makes no difference to me. Let me just rudely interrupt my past self and talk about the tea I'm drinking. So this is the same Royal Ripe Pu'er I've been drinking for a while, but this is my last batch of it, very sad. And the final cups of it go into my mouth right now. I thought about changing my tea drinking a little bit. I got some raw pu'er, some white teas and oolong, and I just miss the punch in your face potency of these ripe pu'ers. So cheers to you. Go back to my old self now and talk about my identity crisis. So I sold a good half, if not more, of my collection a few years ago. And I took that money and I thought, what do I want to do? I still love video games. I want to collect video games. You see, I have quite a few of them here. But what do I do? I no longer felt like acquiring games just to have them and to have something to play. Because quite honestly, we have things like EverDrives now. Consoles like the Wii, I have soft modded. The PS3 is soft modded as well. There are so many ways to, let's say, acquire old school video games without having to own the physical cartridge for it. And you still play on original hardware, which is the important thing for me. I don't need to necessarily like put the cartridge in or put the disc in to play the game. Having the original hardware, the original controllers, that's what's important for me. So I had a serious consideration about what games I want to keep in my collection and which games I want to buy in the future. And that's where the identity crisis comes in, because I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm still not sure. I'm changing my mind all the time. But what I decided is I definitely want a more curated collection. I wanted to represent my interests and like my identity as a video gamer and as a collector. And games like Hugo Backe-Zoom don't say anything about me. So get that stuff out. What I started to do, I went after complete collections, not for consoles, but for genres on consoles I care about. For example, right here I have a basically complete Dreamcast role-playing game collection. And when I thought about which version do I want for all of these games, I went for a complete US Dreamcast role-playing game collection. Main reason is I prefer the jewel cases compared to the European ones. They take up less space, again like space efficiency. And I made a list of a collection of Dreamcast role-playing games I would consider complete. I only went for Japanese role-playing games, so things like Silver, I didn't care about. I sold my copy of Silver that I had from before that. I had the European version. I don't consider that part of the complete Dreamcast JRPG collection. So I made a list of all the games I wanted to get. Now, what do you consider JRPG? Philosophical question. And I decided that a game like Egg, for example, is an action role-playing game, like an action game, puzzle game, Zelda-style game, which I don't consider JRPG, so it's not part of my complete collection. A game like A Record of Lodoss War, which is a Diablo clone, and it's made by Japanese people, it's based on a Japanese license, but the gameplay is not really a Japanese role-playing game, so I don't consider that part of the collection on paper as well. I had a game like Phantasy Star Online. I decided, okay, there's no reason to get Phantasy Star Online 1 when I can get Volume 2 or Version 2, because it's simply a better version of the original. So I got that. I don't have Version 1 anymore. I sold my European copy for that. And I don't have Egg. I don't have Lodoss War. So according to my original idea of a complete Dreamcast JRPG collection, I have a complete set. Now, I know that the collection, according to my own goals I have set in the beginning, is complete. I still want that Lodoss War. I still want Egg. I still want version 1 of Phantasy Star Online. Even though it's not part of the complete collection, like my idea of it, like the logical idea is that it's complete, the collector side in me, the enthusiast side in me still wants the inferior version of this game because it's another version I want. So even though I have set goals for myself, sometimes you set goals because you think this is the right goal to achieve. And you can say that about, okay, the right goal is I want a complete Mega Drive collection. Okay, that's a goal you say because that's a cool goal. That's maybe something you have an interest in having. But then your emotional side maybe tells you 40% of these games I'm never going to play. You know? So there's the part of having a collection, setting goals on paper, and then feeling accomplished by it. And either like feeling like you have too much stuff, or feeling there are still gaps in my theoretically complete collection I need to fill. So there's the emotional side, and that's also where my collecting problems come in. which version of a game I want to own for my collection do I want. For example, I have, where is it? Here it is. I have Okami on the PS2. I also have the HD port for the PS4. Now now how do I say this? The thinking man side in me says, I want one version of a game. And I want the version that makes the most sense for my collection. What makes the most sense for my collection? That's a good question. Do I want the game I want to play, the PS4 version of Okami, or do I want the game that has the most cultural impact and that maybe even holds its value more? Like retro games tend to at least hold their value, and new games, you buy them new, you lose like 60% of the value just for opening the plastic around it. Now, this is a question I still haven't answered for myself. Am I happy selling my PS4 version of Okami and only keeping the PS2 version? Do I want to keep both? Do I want the PS4 version? Should I actually get the Switch version because I care about the Switch version more? But should I really get a third copy of Okami at this point? And if so, like, I only want one version of a game. Which version do I want? Or do I want all the versions? Like, these are the questions I'm asking myself right now. And not only that, I'm thinking which version of the game I want. This is the European version, the UK version of Okami for the PS2. Like, I don't need this to play the game. I have ways to play PS2 games on my PS2 without having to insert the disc directly. So I don't need the European version to play the game on my European PS2. Now for my collection, I actually want, at least I think I want, the version of the game that was released in the developer's original territory. You know, when you talk to book collectors, for example, the books with the highest value, with the highest collectability, are usually the ones from the region of the author of it. So if you want a Harry Potter book, for example, the most expensive one is the UK version because, you know, J.K. Rowling is English. She lives in the UK. And that's the version you go after. Now for Okami, I would want the Japanese version then. But then there's the problem of uniformity, and that's the problem as well. Now, two games I want to get are Sonic Adventure 1 and Sonic Adventure 2 for the Dreamcast, because Sonic Adventure 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. Sonic Adventure 2 I hate so much that I want the game as a symbol for that. Now, Sonic Adventure 1 was developed in Japan. Sonic Adventure 2 was developed in the US. Now, if I want to follow this goal of having the original version or the original region of the developer, I would want a Japanese copy of Sonic Adventure 1 and a US copy of Sonic Adventure 2. Now, when I put those next to each other on the shelf, they don't match. And I can't have that. So we have, for example, if we had, for example, I have Space Channel 5. Let's say there's a European game, and then for the sequel, I would want the Japanese version. Like that doesn't match up. I can't put these next to each other. The Japanese copies need to go next to the Japanese version, so they are all uniform. And then the PAL version needs to go next to the PAL version. But now they don't feel like a unit anymore. They don't feel like they belong together. So I also need a copy of Space Channel 5, the Japanese version, because now they have a nice little unity and they are there, the families all together. Now, but let's say theoretically the Japanese version, the European version is the original for the first one, like that doesn't fit together. Or yeah, sometimes I still don't know. Yeah, I also have, because I love Space Channel 5, I also have the US version of it right here. They don't fit together. Like now the case kind of fits, but they're still not a family. They don't belong together. You know, these philosophical things I think about. Now, like I said, my goal would be my like historical interest, and if I put sensible goals on paper for my collection, like I said, the original region of the game where it was released, where the developer lives. But for my collection, for uniformity, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And then like I said, you have games like Sonic Adventure where one was developed here, one was developed there. For example, I have Sonic 1, which was developed in Japan as well, and then Sonic 2 was released in the US, or it was developed in the US. They went to San Francisco, the team, and developed there. Now, can I really have a Japanese copy of Sonic here and a US copy of Sonic here? That doesn't work for me. I would want both Japanese copies at that point, because the Japanese copies are usually nicer. But then I have like a Japanese copy of a game that wasn't developed in Japan. So I can't really work that out. And I still cannot. I still don't know what to do. I've started picking up games just because, you know, I like them. For example, my Master System collection. I'm not sure if you can see that over here. Let me see if I can move the camera down a little bit. I still have my complete Master System collection. I didn't sell a single copy of that game, of those games, because the Master System was my first console and I love it and I want my collection of it. Now, my goal for the Master System was to get every game that was like kind of interesting. And I did that. I still have a few gaps to fill, but it's not like I think I'm missing out. Am I on camera? Yeah, I'm on camera. So yeah, for different systems, I have different goals, but the Master System is an exception. I just keep all my games. I want all my games. I still want to fill in a few gaps here. But for all of my other games, like I said, I'm trying to set goals for myself and to think about which versions I want to get for something that makes sense. But like my mind and my heart are in two different places right here. And I don't know what to do. That's my identity crisis. I think that's now, we are like 22 minutes into the video. I think we are at the point where I can say, let's quit right here, because I honestly don't know what to do. And I want to hear everyone else out there, like, what do you do? I know most people, Adam talked in his video about, I go for the games in my region first, then I will go for Europe, because they speak English there as well, and then he goes for Japan, which makes sense as well, but that's not how I think. I more think about the like cultural background of a game. That when a game was developed in Japan, and I don't need the copy to play because piracy, I want the Japanese version. But then when you look at it as a whole in the collection, I would want the like full Sonic trilogy on the Mega Drive in Japanese, and I would want the US copy of 2 and 3 and Knuckles, and I'm repeating myself. You understand my trouble? It's a very personal thing. You may think like, what are you talking about? It makes no sense. Just buy the games you want. Buy the games in your region, the cheapest, the nicest packaging. But that's not how it works for me. Anyway, thanks for watching. That's my rambling about my video game collecting identity crisis. I'm working on it. I'm trying to figure out what to do. And right now I'm just going back and forth between everything. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. See you in the next video. Goodbye.